Hello, welcome to another Read with Me with Miss Stephanie. I am so excited to be able to read with you today. I also have a special friend with me. He's a cute little mouse right here, but in this book, let me tell you, he is a stinking rat. And so with no further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get started. The name of this book is Emmy and the Incredible Shrinking Rat by Lynne Jonell, and we'd like to thank Henry Holt and Company for allowing us to read this book with our friends. This book, I would say, is targeted more for grades 4th through 8th grade. It's humorous, realistic fiction, science fiction, some fantasy, and there are some good life lessons in here. Speaking of that, I do have a couple of questions that I want you to think about as you're hearing some of the story and as you read on after I finish. So have you ever felt like no matter how hard you tried, it just wasn't good enough? That's my first question. My second question is, have you ever tried very hard to impress your parents or other people and it just didn't seem like it was enough? And then my other question is it possible to earn respect from people without being mean? So those are some things I want you to think about as you continue reading this book after I'm done. Emmy was a good girl. At least she tried very hard to be good. She did her homework without being told. She ate all her vegetables, even the slimy ones. And she never talked back to her nanny, Miss Barmy, although it was almost impossible to keep quiet some days. Of course, no one can keep this kind of thing up forever, but Miss Barmy had told Emmy that if she were a good girl, her parents would probably want to see her more often, and so Emmy kept on bravely trying. So far, it hadn't helped. Emmy's parents went on one vacation after another, to Paris, to Salonika, to the Isle of Boogaloo, and hardly ever seemed to come home or even miss her at all. "If you did better in school, I'm sure they would be pleased," said Miss Barmy, admiring her polished fingernails. This was unjust. "My last report card was all A's," Emmy said sturdily, remembering how hard she had worked for them. "But not a single A plus, dear," Miss Barmy smiled sweetly, checking her lipstick in a pocket mirror. "And how are your ballet lessons coming? Are you getting any less clumsy?" Emmy's shoulders slumped. She had tripped just last week. "Really, Emmeline, your parents might pay attention to you if you ever did anything worth paying attention to. Why don't you bring home some more ribbons and trophies?" "I have a whole shelf full," Emmy said faintly. "You'll just have to try a little harder, dear. Fill 2 shelves. So Emmy did. Not that anyone noticed. Still, Miss Barmy said that good girls didn't care too much about being noticed, so Emmy tried not to care. She really was a little too good, which is why she liked to sit by the rat. The rat was not good at all. When the children at Grayson Lake Elementary reached in to feed him, he snapped at their fingers. When they had a little trouble with fractions, he sneered. And he often made cutting remarks in a low voice when the teacher was just out of earshot. Emmy was the only one who heard him, and even she wondered sometimes if she was just imagining things. Do you think she was imagining hearing a rodent? One Wednesday in May, when not one person had seemed to notice her all morning, Emmy asked to stay indoor for recess. "I have spelling to study," she explained to Mr. Herbivore. The teacher, hurrying out of his class, didn't look at her as he nodded permission. At least Emmy thought he had nodded. "Thank you," said Emmy, and then she heard something that sounded oddly like a snort. She looked at the rat. He snorted again. He was scowling as usual. "Why are you always so mean?" Emmy wondered aloud. She didn't expect the rat to answer. She tried to speak to him before, and he had always pretended not to hear. But this time, he curled his upper lip. "Why are you always so good?" Emmy was too startled to respond. The rat shrugged one furry shoulder. "It doesn't get you anywhere. Just look at you, missing recess to study words you could spell in your sleep. And the only thing that happens is you get ignored." Emmy looked away. It was true. Her parents never answered the letters she sent, even though she copied them over for neatness and gave them to Miss Barmy to mail. Her teacher kept forgetting her name, even though she had made a placard for her desk that said Emmy in big red letters edged with silver glitter. And she didn't want to tell the rat, but she didn't mind missing recess at all. For Emmy, recess was a time when she felt more alone than ever. "The bad ones get all the attention," said the rat. "Try being bad for once. You might like it." Emmy thought about being bad. It had its appeal. If she were bad, she could stick out her tongue at Miss Barmy. She could call her parents long distance whenever she wanted. She could climb on her desk in school and scream until the other kids had to notice her. "Ah!" "No one will like me if I'm bad," she said. "No one likes you anyway," said the rat bluntly. Emmy frowned. "Well, they don't dislike me." "That's right," the rat answered promptly. "Nobody likes you, nobody dislikes you, nobody cares about you either way. You're a big nothing, if you ask me." "I didn't," said Emmy with some spirit. The rat's whiskers twitched. "That's the first time I've ever heard you sound like anything but a piece of wet bread. Why don't you stand up for yourself more often?" "Listen," Emmy said, "it's not like I don't try." "Yesterday, when that girl with the ponytail butted in line, you let her. And when that kid who sits across from you, that soccer star, the freckled one with the hair that looks like a haystack." "Joe Benson?" "Yeah, him. Well, when Haystack Hair was walking backward and stepped on your foot, you said, 'Sorry.'" "I was just being nice," said Emma. "You're too nice," said the rat sharply. "A little meanness is good for the soul. I highly recommend it." Emmy lifted her chin. "Being mean doesn't get you anywhere. Nobody pets you. Nobody plays with you." "I get what I want," said the rat, showing his long yellow teeth. "I get respect, which is more than I can say for you." Emmy glared at him. "You get respect? You live in a cage." The rat looked stunned. "Well, it's true," Emmy said crossly. "Don't tell me you haven't noticed. You know, the bars, the lock on the door." The rat's whiskers trembled. "You're not being nice." "Nice? I thought a little meanness was good for the—" "Most people don't mention it. Most people know better than to taunt a rodent about his unfortunate situation." "Look, you were the one who said, 'It's not my fault I'm locked up.'" The rat's voice quavered pathetically. "I committed no crime. Have I survived kidnapping from the nest, unjust imprisonment, and absolutely appalling food?" He gave his dish of pellets a contemptuous kick. "Only to be mocked by a little child?" "I'm bigger than you," Emmy began hotly. "And you were the one who said I should be so nice." "But not to me. It's different when you're mean to me." "Oh, right," said Emmy. There was a thunder of footsteps and a clatter of voices in the hall. Emmy watched resignedly as her classmates poured in, laughing and talking. They all seemed friendly enough to one another, but no matter how Emmy tried, they just looked right through her as though she weren't there. Why were things so different here? At her old school, she had had lots of friends. But then her parents had inherited all that money and moved across town to live in great Uncle William's old mansion on the shores of Grayson Lake. And after that, a lot of things had changed. Maybe it's me, Emmy thought dismally. Maybe I've turned into some horrible person and I don't even know it. She opened a book and bent her head, letting straight brown hair fall around her face like a curtain. But as the children around her quieted down, she heard a small sob. Emmy peeked sideways. The rat had retreated to the far corner of his cage, his face buried in his forepaws. He looked as if he were sleeping, but Emmy saw the rat's gray shoulders heave, and after a while, one small paw emerged to wipe the corner of his eye. Do you think he was crying? Poor rat. For all his tough talk, he was awfully sensitive. Apparently, she shouldn't have mentioned his cage. Sorry, she whispered, and then the phone on the teacher's desk rang. Emma? Emmeline Addison? Mr. Eberforth gazed out over the heads of his students. Emmy stood up. No, I don't see her, he said into the phone. Joe Benson snickered. Emily walked forward and stood by the teacher's desk. What did she have to do, she wondered, bewildered. Throw firecrackers under his chair? Hang from the ceiling and make like a monkey? She tugged at the teacher's sleeve and spoke loudly in his ear. Here I am, Mr. Eberforth. The teacher stared at her doubtfully. Oh, are you sure? He looked puzzled. Well, you're wanted in Dr. Leander's office. Emmy knocked grumpily at Dr. Leander's door. She hated visiting the psychologist. She already had to sit there an hour every other week, just making up stuff for him to write in his blue notebook. Why did she have to go again? The door opened. Emmy stepped back. Hello, dear, said Miss Barmy. The nanny had soft dark hair and green eyes, rimmed with gold like a cat's. Her lipstick was a slick pink, and when she smiled, she showed a glimpse of perfectly even teeth like a row of white chisels. Dr. Leander was gazing at her with open admiration. Men always did admire Miss Barmy. Emmy didn't know why. Maybe it was the odd cane she carried that everyone found so fascinating. Or maybe men thought she was pretty. Years ago, Emmy knew Miss Barmy had won a beauty contest. But in spite of that, Emmy thought the nanny's face looked hard, as if all the makeup were a polished pink shell that no one could crack. So we're coming to almost the end of the first chapter. This is a longer chapter, but it's fast-paced. It's hilarious. It's so inviting to read. So I want to encourage you to read on. Thank you for listening. Our next read with me will be the title, Monsters and Mold by Asia Citro. So we want to encourage you, if you haven't, to come by Willard Library and get our book bundles for your family. You get one per family, and we just hope that you're able to continue reading for the fun of it. And if for some reason our book bundles aren't available, you can download these on Hoopla. And so there's always several ways that you can read every title that we are reading with Read with Friends. Thank you for listening. Have a great summer. And again, read for the fun of it, because readers make leaders.